pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Garrett, go to the prayer.
Yeah, I'm going to. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the much needed rain yesterday. Just pray that you be with us tonight as we make decisions for our community. Give us clear eyes to see the right decision and open hearts and wise minds and make the best decisions possible for all people. And just thank you for what you're doing in this community. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Allison, do roll call.
Yes. My name is Allison Sanders, City Secretary. I will do roll call now. Kim Williams. Here. Colby Caper.
Here.
William Rutledge.
Here.
Brad Snowdy.
Here.
Charles Scarborough. Here. Eric Stevens.
I'm here.
And Julie Vasquez. Here. And Mayor Corey Glassburn is absent. And Colby Caper, Mayor Pro Tem.
Any citizens comment?
No, we don't have anybody signed up or submitted anything to speak for
Okay.
now.
Going to the fire department update.
Things you pulled up this year.
That's great.
All right, February had 6 EMS calls, 2 wildland fire, 1 NBA, 4 structure calls. These were all thankfully just heaters. 1 for a gas leak and 1 unofficial parachute rescue right across the road. We told the guys, listen, that's cool, that is something you have to call the sheriff's office on, and he gets towed out for it. That's something everybody needs to hear. The Jeff Edwards, the ISO, came in, and our audit will be in 6 months, so we'll be hooking up hydrants, test 1 or 2 of them for flow. But the biggest thing is our trucks, we have to have those tested, pump tested. And when John's on that, we're gonna get somebody in here, and it's such a big ordeal, we'll probably have several stations come in, volunteer fire departments, get their trucks tested. And that's about it. Oh, and I'm talking to Lee Harvey, we're trying to get a date nailed down for the fish fry, probably the end of September.
Sounds good.
That's all we have, thank y'all.
Thanks, Lon.
Bet.
John, do you want to do anything in emergency management? Do you want to give an update now, or do you want to do it at the end?
I can now.
Okay.
Did you want me to cover the city generator?
Yes.
Okay, so we were successful in acquiring a 30K generator. That's parked, over on the fire department side. It's got 500 hours on it, it's in really, really good shape. In relation, the fire department's also acquired a light cart that's a combination light cart and generator, so we'll actually have, 2 generators on hand, one to 30K and one to 7K, so, very thankful for that. The grant for the wood chipping project that I mentioned the last meeting, that's in, we should hear on that by the end of the month, hopefully, whether or not we've gotten that. That's all I've got.
Thanks.
Good for sure.
Thank you.
As far as I got for city manager, I got 2 things. April 1st and April the 8th is when those 2 publications for bids for the 2 lots that we want to sell will run in the Archer County paper. And we'll take bids all the way up until April the 20th. And then we will obviously open them at the April 20th council meeting and then award the bid, so that will be coming out. But the only other thing that's, I thought it was pretty cool, I'm sure y'all saw on Facebook, we were voted, Dallas Morning News did a little article about neighborhoods in North Texas, and we came in at number 7. We were up there with some of the cities from Richardson, Plano. It was pretty cool, so I thought it was cool that we were up there with that, so it was something sort of to be proud of. Other than that, that's all I got for city manager update. Most of the stuff we'll talk about as we go through the meeting.
Yeah, they like that. City of Dallas, put that on there. Alrighty, we'll go to number 6, consent agenda.
good.
Good.
That brings us to our first regular agenda item, item 7A, discussion consideration on COVID-19 status protocols. This has been on there ever since COVID started, and, I know Corey and, Judge Jackson are in contact and stuff. There's really not very many updates. I'm sure y'all saw Governor Abbott's, update and stuff, but as far as city protocols or anything, we really haven't done anything new. If there's anything y'all want to discuss or talk about or add, now's this time.
Has there been any issues with the bathrooms, any damage?
No, it's typical kids go in there, dirty them up, our guys go in there, gotta clean them up, pick up the trash. Girls are messier than boys, I don't know how that happens, but, yeah, that's about, no vandalism yet, we haven't had any vandalism, and hopefully we won't, knock on wood, so.
Are they still being open in the mornings?
8 to noon, I think is what, Don's doing over there.
And then whoever has, rented the fields out, they have a key?
Mhm.
I'm good where we're at.
Okay. That brings us to the next one. This is the, discussion consideration on payment to contractor M&F Liticon, for the completion of the project. Obviously, y'all see our building's done. We had the grand opening, February, end of February, who's the date?
March
Um,
6th.
So they sent over the final payment. The only thing that hasn't been here, and it was delivered to Lowe's warehouse on Monday, is the dishwasher. Obviously, it's ADA compliant, so they should be out any day this week to put the dishwasher in. And so, once we pay this $53,426, that brings us, we're done. I know Brad, you were asking, out of the whole contingency and everything else, we had roughly $9,075 left over once the project is complete.
Are you happy with it? I mean, you're.
I'm definitely happy with it.
You're in here every day.
Yeah, and there's been a few minor things that we've had to have fixed or whatever to come back when we walked and did the punch list and everything. And no, I'm very impressed with the job that M&F Liticon did, and I couldn't be more pleased. And I think the open house really revealed that to the people that came in and got to see it and saw what it was, and they were all amazed. It's a great facility, it really is.
Lonnie, are you happy on your end?
Oh, yeah, we got a couple little bitty things, ways we'll work on, but that we're good.
But it's,
We're talking about a doorknob and piece of metal by the door over there, that's it.
Has Wade checked in and said anything, like there's nothing outstanding that he saw?
No, the punch list, there was a 2-page punch list, and they went through it, fixed it. There were some gutters that needed caulking, some screws that needed to be put in, and some stuff like that, just minor things. They had that roll-up door needed some adjustment and leveling, they took care of all that, yeah. They had to adjust some of the striker plates, stuff like that, they came up, fixed all that, so, yeah, very well pleased.
make a motion to approve the final payment.
Everybody's happy with it. I'll make a motion that we approve the 53,426.
Mr. Snowy makes a motion.
I'll second.
Any seconds? I'll take us to 7C, discussing consideration on the street.
Yes, so obviously, y'all know, when we took out a certificate of obligation, one of the main things, along with the new building, was doing some extensive street repairs throughout Lakeside City. And that's obvious, they haven't been touched in quite some time. So, right before Snowmageddon came, Dean was out here, marked off some stuff, and then Snowmageddon hit, sort of put us a week and a half behind, so I'm gonna sort of turn this over to Dean and let Dean run with this.
I've got handouts.
Pictures. Basically, this is a map, or maps. The first page is just an overall map. Second page shows you, I believe, east side.
There's a chair there.
Places that need to be there.
Do you want me to sit up
Talk about it briefly. just for example, it shows the east side, it's got some circles with some numbers in them. Basically, those are locations where we found some pavement that needs some attention possibly. Just looked at it and tried to find the worst spots. And we've got, along with those numbers, I'll hand you out our spreadsheet that shows the size and location and how much it would cost, estimated cost to fix each one of those. Now, the thing about that is, and I wanna caution you on this, is that that spreadsheet has probably about half to 2/3 of them don't really need any attention at this time. But in 5 years, when you come back and look at it again, you got a list that says, well, it looked pretty bad 5 years ago, but it still looks pretty bad. Do we need to do anything with it? If we had this kind of data from 5 or 6 years ago before, we could look at it and say, well, it's going downhill or it's not. So that's one thing I think is gonna be very helpful to you all. Let me just go through these plan sheets really quick and show you basically what we propose to do. Eric and I wrote them out again last week. If you look on sheet 2, you'll see that, in Lakeside City East, there's some streets that have some cross hatching in them. Those are projected to be seal coated. And it looks like my draftsman turned a layer off over here on Edwards Way and Donna Street. We were looking at overlaying from a little past that intersection going north and going west, all the way to Highway 79. So that one wasn't picked up. The other work that's shown on there is the patches that we found, places that we thought might be patched. I'm gonna go back through those and probably X off the ones that don't really need to be done. And I'll explain that to you in a little bit. The patching is expensive, and some places don't really have to have it, but I was just marking places that might be of interest to us, especially if we were going to seal coat or overlay over the top of them. Sheet 3 is a lot like sheet 2. Go sheet 4, and that puts you on Lakeside City West. And it looks like he did not have his layer turned on. We were projected to do Royal Road from, Shoreline going west back around there to overlay those. And we have some seal coating set up on Schooner, Windjammer, and Galleon. And then some additional seal coating going from Royal Road up to Caprock Cove. And there is a small section on Royal Road where it makes that hard turn from where it goes north to going back to the west that needs to be overlaid. And we did not have that layer was turned off. Don't have a way of getting that to you today. What I'll plan on doing is just, sending you a copy to Eric and get you a new copy of that. You go to sheet 5 and we have, Royal Road with some seal coating on it. And Boyd Way with some seal coating, and then that terrible intersection of Shoreline, Clipper, Boyd's Way, and all the way to that piece of concrete. We are projecting to do that with an overlay. I would love to go in and concrete it like we did that piece of concrete where it makes that hard curve. We did that about 20 years ago, and it's held up really well. I'd love to be able to do that if we could afford it, but that one's gonna be expensive. The other one we're showing on that sheet to do anything with is CB Drive, which we're going to, broom off that loose rock and put another layer of seal coat on it. Maybe we get enough asphalt down that we can actually get some rock to stick. Go to sheet 6, that's called patchwork on that sheet. And sheet 7 is all patchwork except for the end of the skyline, which is where we're projecting to rebuild that intersection a little bit. And then seal coat part of the skyline going south. We also have some other patches that need to be worked in there. As I said, I'm gonna go back through there one time with my assistants. We're gonna X off the ones that really need it, so we can determine on our patching what needs to be done. If you look at the bottom of that first sheet I gave you, the part that really matters to you on that spreadsheet is that bottom line. I don't have it with me, but, what did it have? That total amount said, I think we only have to do about a third of those. That ends up to be about $102,000.
Remind me, where you at on that?
Yeah.
It's not on the bottom of the first page,
It's on the bottom of the last page.
last page.
And that's just for the patches. And some of those patches are gonna need to be done underneath the overlays, or the seal coat to make sure everything has a good base underneath it. These next sheets I'm handing you are for the seal coating and overlay portions of the project. And then that last sheet, yes, it tells you the total amount. I'll just go over that briefly. We were using a unit price of $295 or $294 square yards for seal coating. This is a small project. If it were a $200,000 project, we could probably get it for the $235, $240 range. But being a smaller project, you got a lot of movement expenses on it. I have four places on there for an alternate for seal coating. At one time, we thought we might be a little tight on money, and we are. But those might be some that we decide to do after we get the bids in for those four. If you look at the overlay list, you see the areas that we're showing overlaying. I think I told you about all of these as I went through it. Edwards Way, yes, I told you about that one. And then we go to the west side, we have Royal from Clipper to 508 Royal, and Royal from Royal to Shoreline, 504 Royal to Shoreline. In between 508 and 504 Royal, it has been overlaid sometime in some pretty good shape, but it does need seal coating in that area. It's starting to get, I'll say the word, dry. The rock doesn't have enough asphalt around it to start, help hold it down. It needs to be protected. It gets a lot of traffic on the two roads, y'all know about it. Royal and Shoreline gets all the traffic right here, and we've got to take good care of them. Shoreline has a section that needs to be overlaid. Caprock Cove has a section inside of it that, inside the cul-de-sac needs to be something done with it. Like, if you drive out there on it, I wouldn't want to put a car out there during a rainstorm, I'll say that. The shoreline also from the Clipper intersection, the voyage area and concrete, I got that listed out there about how much that would cost. And then that Skyline intersection work that I mentioned, all that added up to $122,453. So the seal coat is $51,000 and $122,000 for the overlay. You add that to what I think we're gonna have on patch, and we're about 276, which is better than what I thought we were gonna have just this morning when I was talking to you. I was thinking we were gonna be higher than that, but the overlay is not as expensive as we had originally planned on.
So you're saying 276, 290 is for the whole project,
That's what I've got, for what I've got right there.
and we have designated 500,000.
Right.
So what
We
you're
can
saying?
add some to this, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So
Which
once
is
I go
fine.
in and take all those patches out, or figure out which ones are as critical, we can probably adjust all this up and down and get it to a good number.
Okay. Good.
You know, when you and I drove through the other day, we looked at them, there's some places you can look at, the ones that are worst are the ones that have a little sag in them, holding water, those need to be fixed. A lot of your worst problems you have out here are is that there's no crown in the street, very little crown in the street, and it just holds water and holds it. And so the cars drive over it, the little alligator cracks let water go through, and it makes the base weak.
Snow kills it too, doesn't it?
And it's
Snowfall.
The snow is not good on it. We painted east side before the snow, and normally I can paint a stripe and it'll be there a month later. I could barely chase them down next week, but the snow just ate them up. And I want to walk the east side again because I wanna see what damage occurred during the snow. Because a lot of stuff didn't look that bad then. Now, the east side does look worse generally than the west, but I think it probably took some damage. But that's where we are right now, and what I'd like to do is maybe sit down with Eric and get some final numbers together and drive through things again and get y'all some good numbers. We can take these same sheets and just regenerate them and send them to you. And then you can have something you can work with.
That $376 is a good start, pretty much, isn't it? Or
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's got some fat in it.
Right, okay. And it looks like we've covered quite a bit.
I think that Dean and I's goal is sort of iron hash all this out and get it to where it's at our budget, and then have it at the April 20th meeting to where y'all can approve it and we can put it out for bid. Obviously, that would be around May to be able to award the contract to whoever, receives it, and then early summer start having, seeing some roads fixed and repaired and stuff like that.
One thing I'd like to do is when we bid this is to bid it, maybe consider bidding it for about $450,000 job, and have some alternates so we can know what the costs are, so we can adjust things up and down.
Mhm.
It's a whole lot nicer to do that than have to
Yes, they
negotiate.
do.
on it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So on the patches and seal coat, I'm assuming the, obviously the patches are better, what's the seal coat, we're just putting top layer of,
They spray asphalt on the road, they broom it off, then they'll spray the asphalt on the road, and then a layer of rock.
okay,
Generally, what I use, in your situation, I would use a number 4 rock this time, which is a little bit bigger rock, more like about a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch rock. And then go to a number 5 the next time on those same roads, it's a little smaller rock and fit in between the gaps. We try not to put seal coat at turns if we can, because this time of year, if we go in there and put it down in June, we'll probably make a mistake with the seal coat, we'd rather put it in late August, because you don't have to maintain it as long with the heat.
So Dean, what's this last page on this, whatever it is, 340? What's that number?
That would be if we patched everything that I had patched, had marked out, and we don't need to patch all of those.
That's, you know, when we talk,
I was just going through, saying, this doesn't look good, and this doesn't look good, and how bad is this? So that we could look at those and say, okay, we need to seal coat this road, or we need to overlay it, or we need to really just come in and patch this spot and that, that's fine. It was just something for us to have a marking.
Right.
And it really helped, us give you a good idea of what needs
So
to be
you're
done.
saying, you're telling me that this 340 was everything you marked, and this right here is what you,
I think we'll probably be in that 30 range. But that's the one that's floating the most, if anything.
okay.
I think what he's trying to say, and that was the question that confused me, rather than mill it up, dig it down, do base repair, that, it really doesn't need it, just a good overlay on top of it will satisfy.
Right. Well, my only concern is we're coming in roughly half the budget,
Right.
which is great,
Right.
but I'd like to see it done right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is you would like to see some extensive base repair,
If it
do
needs
more
it.
base
If it
repair.
needs to be.
If it needs it.
Yeah.
Because evidently, hopefully, when the bids come in, we'll have a little money to play with.
I agree, there's, probably the worst street that we've just got a lot of patchwork on is Edwards. Let's see, is it, when you go north-south, Don Street. Don's got a lot of patchwork that we've shown on it, we may want to do something different with it.
And it may be one of those things, is we may have, and once we get it, we may have to come back in and look at the driveways that were skipped.
And we got most of it was just one of those things, we couldn't do just, hey, you got a little hole right here in front of your driveway, we're gonna fix that, when your next door neighbor had it, the whole length of the driveway and then down the road some, you know, that was the hard thing on it.
There's a lot of driveways that have been built with the concrete this much above the asphalt, and so it holds water out there on the asphalt area, and it's making it start to fail. Generally, it's a crack between the two, it'll run in that crack between concrete and asphalt eventually starts moving down and fail.
Thanks, Tina, I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Anybody wants to get the 12,000 steps in, come with me.
doing good, that's good numbers there.
This brings us to our next one, this is discussion and consideration on solar panel propane tank ordinance. Obviously, obviously, Julie talked some about this, this is, I think where we're coming from on this, and I know we've discussed it in past council meetings, we're not coming in saying we don't wanna allow people to put propane tanks or solar panels up. We're totally in support of it, it's very good green energy, and obviously propane, after the snow again, everybody's wanting them. We're just wanting to make sure to, hey, you're gonna, we don't want Lakeside City to turn into where everybody has a white propane tank in their front yard with a red cap, and that's all you see when you drive through Lakeside City. We just want, hey, if you're gonna put one up, and you're gonna put it where you can see it, street view up at the front of your house, that it has some kind of screening, whether it be a small little wooden fence, shrubbery, whatever that is. And then on the solar panels, I had a couple of them call, cause they were told that we were gonna make them come in and put a fence up. Obviously, we talked about, they were gonna be grandfathered in, and if they made any changes to the structure of their currently existing, solar panels, then they would be, responsible for coming in and then putting some kind of screening up then. It's one of those things, they already got it up, we're sort of grandfathered in, so we can't come back and say, oh, by the way, we're gonna go ahead and now make you put a fence up. It's, if you change your existing structure, so if they come in and they add another 6 feet to it or put some more panels up, then we could come in and say, hey, by the way, you need to put up a screen. I think the big thing that we were trying to figure out on these ordinances is what is a good definition of screening? Is that wooden fence panels? Is that, I've seen where they, you know, if you get a chain link fence, you can buy that screening stuff and put it over that. Is was that some of your questions that you had?
Yeah, just pretty much with propane specifically, you guys wanted some type of fence or something around it. And so whenever I was talking to Eric about it, in one of the situations that I think emails that he had sent me, it just said we want it to be appropriate screening. And I'm like, okay, but let's define that. What would you classify as appropriate screening? Because you might think something is an appropriate screening and we put that into an ordinance, but unless we specify what it is or kind of get a little bit more in depth with it, someone else, you know, what I think might be an appropriate screening might not be what you guys think is an appropriate screening. And then you don't want someone coming back and saying, well, the ordinance just said this, and I did that, so I'm free. You get what I mean? Maybe just something a little bit more specific, or a definition of it better, or examples, or whatever the case may be, so that way people don't have to think what that might be. And then with the solar panel, I just wanted to make sure that we were gonna do that grandfather, and then if something changed, or what action was going to be okay, now they're no longer grandfathered. You know, is it just gonna be, oh, they've added one, so now they're no longer grandfathered, or they're doing something way out there that now they're not grandfathered, or what's going on? Because my goal is to hopefully make an ordinance, or draft an ordinance that's gonna clear you guys for a while. You're not gonna have to keep coming back and adding to it, or editing it, or whatever the case may be. Just trying to look at all possible scenarios.
And I think what you relayed to me was, it was sort of hard to create a solar panel ordinance, and then also a propane tank ordinance, because the propane tank is real simple. I mean, there's NFPA rules about where you can put that on your lot and everything else. So we sort of combined it together and made it one ordinance, solar panel, propane tank, screening type thing. You know, I know there's a resident that lives over on the Shoreline that's had solar panels, and he's had them for years and years and years. I just don't think it's fair for us to come back and say, hey, new thing, you gotta put a fence up. That's not fair, that's not what we're trying to do. You know, they already did it, they did it up to what our current specifications were, and those that haven't recently put them on. It's just, hey, well, okay, if you come in and you tear these down and you're gonna put a new system up or something, then that's where we can say, okay, well, if you're gonna do something new to it or something you do now, I can put a fence up.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think some of that confusion was too, I know even I said propane tanks, once grandfather goes in from now, I can go back, I think we said 6 months or a year, something
Yeah.
like that, and put a fence around them. And I'm good with either chain link with the screening, which I think is not gonna be as cost effective as just getting privacy fence panels and go around it.
Right.
I would say almost just do those two. I mean, I'd hate to see anything past that.
I had one thing on the solar panel, under 32, on the maintenance. We don't address anything about when that panel system is obsolete, they don't use it anymore, it's just sitting out there and it's broken, and glass is broken, broken or the panels are broken, there's nothing talks about they have to take it down, remove it, or dispose of that system. And I think we need to address that.
Add that in there to where if those solar panels are no longer used and just sitting there,
So I do have something right here that says solar panels that are not in use shall be disengaged so as to prevent accidental electrical charges to property or
Yes,
person.
I read that, but there's nothing that's, well, that's just disengaging for electricity, but
Okay,
if it
so
sits
you
out
want them
there,
completely
if
removed?
this sits out there over a period of time and they break and they fall apart and they're obviously, eyesore, they
Mhm.
need to be removed.
yeah.
Okay, so instead of having the disengage, do you just wanna take that completely off and just say, hey, if it's not being used, it's broken down, you have to do it? So if that's the case, how long does it have to be broken down before you're telling them they have to put it out? Or take it out?
That's a good question. I think after, if it's not being used, like 90 days,
I was gonna say 6 months, but not,
6 months,
But
that's
it may be,
fine.
if they don't have the money to fix that one panel or two, they're trying to use that money to fix it, so therefore it's disengaged while they're replacing those panels. Gotta give them some leeway to fix it or replace it, and if they don't, then they need to come out.
Or if they need, like if we need to do an extension type thing, they need to bring it before council, so that way we can discuss it then, and they can let us know, here's what I'm doing, A, B, and C, this is my time frame. This is what I'm looking at, can I get an extension, and then we can
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, 'cause we definitely wanna work with them.
Yeah.
Make it-
And you know, like you said, that one on Shoreline, if it was no longer in use and it sat there for the next 5 years, it could sit there forever,
Yeah.
and there's no way.
And a lot of that is, you know, keeping an honest man honest. I mean, you can might have one right there, it looks good and everything else, and you're not gonna be using it, and how are we gonna know whether you're actually using it or not? I
You
think
don't,
it's,
but-
if it turns into an eyesore type
Yeah, you
thing,
can tell those panels
yeah,
aren't being used,
Okay.
and they start breaking and falling apart, and there's no maintenance on it, you're gonna know
Okay.
when it's not being used anymore.
And I think the same thing goes for the, propane tanks, like, do we need to say, I feel like we need to say, there needs to be a clearance level, they need to be at least a certain clearance from the propane tank, do we want them all the way, like, where you can't see it, or?
a lot of the propane tanks talking with, Kelly Propane, they really like, you could have X amount of feet or
Around.
distance from your fence to that, so they can get in there and access it and stuff like that. I know, generators, there's been a couple calls about generators, people want to put generators in. Now, generator manufacturers already have a thing, well, if you put your generator here and you don't give us, I think it's 5 feet is what, he told me, they won't, and you got a problem with it, they're not gonna come in and service it or honor the warranty. And Kelly Propane's sort of the same way, to where it's not accessible and they can't get in there and they can't fill it up, they're not gonna fill it up. So we gotta still, you know, comply with them on that. So
Yeah,
you-
that's
And just
for
to
them
add to
get
that,
in there.
when I was looking at the propane situation, because I was trying to draft a good ordinance and try to figure out if I could see what other counties might be doing or anything, I couldn't find anything from other counties here in Texas, at all. But I kept finding that those are pretty much, there's set rules on what you can, cannot do and how far and this and that anyways. So to have to just rewrite it, probably don't need to.
Okay.
There were some that said, you know, if the propane tank is, I forgot what it said, I think it said above ground, it had to do like this far out, and I don't know, it had very specific stuff. I found a whole bunch of stuff that it seemed to be regulated or something. And so, that's just kind of why then I asked you,
Right.
what exactly are you wanting then? So we don't have to repeat what's already out there, but just kind of really specify what it might be that you guys are interested in doing for that.
We need to get a height on the fences for these things, like propane could be.
That was my question, is the height clearance, not necessarily the space for them to get in, but the height, like, cause you were talking about, you have to look out your window and you see the big white tank over there, so the clearance to make it like 2 foot above that, to where at least you just see.
I think 6 foot fence picket's normal, but I do wonder about like the solar panels. I mean, if somebody sees fence, they come with a 4-foot fence and they're just covering this much of it, you know,
Yeah.
when we wanna be here, so.
I think Kim's the one, if you're gonna put one up, 18 inches, your screening has to be 18 inches above
The top of
the top of the propane tank, or top of the solar panel, something that way, so I'm
Well, if
like,
it's slanted, you come like the bottom part or like,
the highest most part.
Yeah, the highest part.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough. I don't look like a prison wall either.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Cause our ordinance right now is 8 foot tall,
Yeah.
maximum on the fence. Does that help give you some stuff? You're saying
Yeah.
18 inches, a foot above? I don't know, is
For
it
the
a foot
propane
above?
tank, you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll put that in there, I'll add the maintenance situation for the solar panel, cause I did have something like that, I think when I first emailed you about it, I might have just not put it in there when I was working on it, so I'll do that. The only other thing that I do, there's two things, for the screening then, for the propane, I know I heard someone say a privacy fence, and then they stated something else that would be appropriate.
Well, and I don't know about that. I mean, if you put a chain link fence around it with a windscreen, the windscreen's will get tattered and wear out, you know, after several years, I don't know. So I'm gonna just want to stick with the privacy fence material and be done with it.
What if somebody was come in and put like red tip bushes or something like that, you know,
Mhm.
grows up and covered and keep it trimmed, like landscaping type thing, is that okay?
That'd be a good cover, yeah.
I
Long as
guess
it's
what-
covered it.
What we could possibly do on that is maybe put privacy fence, and then if they have another suggestion or idea, maybe they can bring it to you guys to see if you guys,
Yes.
kind of like the other situation, so if it's like a bush or something like that, you guys might like it because it'll look pretty, and it's just a win-win, so they don't have to worry. Does that kind of work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cause it could be, I mean, they could, depending on their house, they could brick around it. You know, we're gonna tear that down if it looks nice,
Right,
Mhm.
I agree, that's a good point.
so. Council approved.
Okay. And then for solar panel, are we saying grandfathered? And then what exactly are you guys, what do you guys consider a big change to then comply?
I think, and that was asked, anything, if you change the height, the overall height, width of the existing structure, then you fall out of the grandfather thing.
Okay.
Now, still worry about the fence on that, the height of the fence. I mean, I kinda want them like side of the house, behind the house, out of the way, not in the front, but I'm afraid the fence, if we get I don't know, them things are 10 or 12 foot tall, and we're getting a 13, 14 foot privacy fence around it, I don't know what that's gonna look like. I hate to be devil's advocate, I don't wanna stare at this, I don't wanna stare at that, but.
You can come back and say, if you're in a ground mount solar panel, they have to be behind the back part of your house, they have to be in your back property or something.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we had kinda, even with the house to behind it, which, you know, when you're not turning down the street, you're not seeing it here.
Yeah, so
Like,
anywhere
never
from
like that,
the front line of your home
right,
back,
behind, yeah.
that makes sense?
It
Yeah,
does.
it kind of is.
Go ahead.
They have to be behind the front line of your home, so obviously, the front line of your home, they can't be anywhere out in front of that, they have to be behind it.
Okay, we're talking about the solar panel, the ground mounted
Yes,
solar panel,
correct.
okay. Just wanted to make
Both
sure,
of
we're
them,
talking
right?
about
Both
propane
of
and
them.
solar going
Yeah.
back, and so I wanna make sure.
Yeah, and I think both of them for that matter, I really don't think we wanna see a propane tank in somebody's front yard type thing, out
Yeah.
in front of the house.
Okay, so put that in there as well, no propane in front of the house.
Right.
Okay.
So what do you think on the fences? I mean, do 6 or 8 foot, just kinda cover at least the majority of it, or are we still thinking we wanna go to the top, tippy top?
We wanna go to the top. and that's
Right.
it.
If they're ground mounted and they're over 8 foot tall,
Mm-hmm.
then I would say then you probably want them to come before council and say, hey, here's what I'm fixing to put in my front yard, and this is gonna be 12 foot tall, and then if y'all gonna want me to put a fence up, it's gonna be 12 foot tall, and
Right.
then that's the council decision then.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be a shrub over there.
Any more questions you need answered?
No, I think that might be pretty good. I'll go ahead and make these corrections and do all that stuff this week, so then I can give you another copy, and then if you guys think of something else, or whatever the case may be, we can add or edit from there.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Good. Any other questions, council, on that one? This brings us to our next, yearly thing, we received notification from Waste Connections, which is our trash company. Effective April 1st, 2021, rates will be increased by 1.38%. The new rate for the city, for one can will be $19.49, and the rate for the additional can is $5.52. I know last year, this comes every March. This is one of those things every March for the past, ever since we've been in contract with Waste Connections, they do a CPI rate increase on us. I know last year we were able to postpone it until July just because COVID hit and we were able to say, hey, COVID, and they gave us till then. This will come next March, and it'll come every March from there. I know last year, it got to that point to where we were peaking and we had to make some rate adjustments to the citizens, and we went up. Currently, the city charges residents $25 for 1 can, $30.39 for 2 cans, and then $36.89 for 3 cans. Again, it's something we can't argue and come back and say, we don't accept, we have to accept it. We're in, the contract with them, is set, rolling evergreen contract that renews every year for 5 years. Y'all can see the rates there. I think we took care of it this year when we last year adjusted the rate, so we should be good for a couple more years, a few more years. So all I need is just motion accepting the Waste Connection for the 1.38%. Unless y'all have any questions or wanna discuss anything on it.
I'll make that motion and leave the prices as is.
Okay.
I'll second.
That brings us to the next one, 7F. And this is something that happens every year, the Consumer Price Index adjustment for the Public Utility Commissions. Obviously, that's the money that we get back for the telephone poles that Charter Communications has wires on the telephone poles, Encore, stuff like that. We really don't, we have to, if I don't write a letter, they automatically adjust it up to the 0.482%, what they're saying right now. Last year, we took it and we never said we want to keep the same rate. I mean, it just, it's more revenue back in for us. Now, if y'all don't want to, y'all can, tell me, and then I have to submit a letter back to them saying we don't want the CPI rate increase. So if y'all wanna keep it as is, I just need a motion saying, what it says in there about adjusting the consumer price index to 0.482%.
I'll make a motion that we do the CPI as the 0.482%.
Second? Anybody got a second?
I'll second it.
That brings us to our last agenda item. Obviously, we got the election coming up May 1st. First Secretary of State, the election judge must be approved by the City Council. In the past, I'm sure y'all are familiar with Janice Robinson that lives here. Her and Amy have worked these elections, last year and a couple of years now, have done a great job. Christy Mooney, that runs Archer County elections, she's the one in charge of recommending them. She recommended these two. We don't pay them individually, we pay Archer County elections, one lump sum at the end. It's roughly just for the two election judges, and all they do is they just sit in here when people come in, verify their voter registration, driver's license, all that stuff. They're not like a so-called judge, it's sort of a big name for what they do, but they're great people. She's saying it's probably gonna cost us about $2,000, which she'll charge us. One of the good things about it, Holiday ISD is having a school board election, and so they've asked, hey, can we have so Lakeside City residents don't have to drive out to Holiday ISD and vote. They can vote up here for Holiday ISD, so we can split that cost with them. Holiday ISD pays for half, we pay for half. But by law, we got to have a motion approving Janice Robinson to be the election judge. There's really not any other ones out there besides Janice and Amy, and they do a good job.
Make a motion for Ms. Robinson to be the election judge. Anybody will make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Janice for the judge.
I'll second.
That brings us to the last one, just items from members of the city council, if y'all got anything.
No.
How we doing on the Lone Star inspections?
Good, we're roughly 45, of them completed. He just submitted some more to me, and a payment request on Friday. Obviously, council agenda was already set, so I couldn't put it on there. So the next council, there'll be another one, approving his, thing. Those are going very well. We've even seen a decrease, obviously from the snowstorm, and then, this weekend we had some rain. What we're pumping up to the lift stations has dropped, I mean, not significantly, but we are seeing improvements through that. I talked with Scott Storm the other day. He's obviously the president of the Sewer Task Force Committee. He's had a few calls on it, and once the citizens understand what we're doing, they've been in full support of it. Hey, if it helps the overall sewer and it's gonna save the city money in the long run, they're definitely in support of it. And so we've had very good feedback on it. It's just plugging through and keep it. I mean, obviously we got 480 homes in Lakeside City, so he has to hunker down and get them done.
And the sewer task force never put anything out to the citizens, did they?
No, we're probably gonna send out a letter just stating, hey, this is what it is, because there's been some confusion out there. And so we just wanna clarify a few things and make sure everybody understands the whole point of it. I mean, obviously, y'all know we did this in January, approved it. We decided not to pass the burden on to the taxpayers and make them pay for the septic inspections, that y'all decided to have the designated sewer funds and the certificate of obligation to absorb that cost. And so we, to this date, we have not charged one citizen any money for an inspection or anything else. We've had 2 people that have had cracked lids. They knew it beforehand, and they were like, hey, I knew it, and I wanna take care of it, I wanna have the city, they paid for it. I think their cost was roughly $300, for them to put the thing on, and they paid for that, and that's one of those things. I mean, we've known, it's an understood thing that if you live here, your septic tank is your responsibility, and the green tank's that. And so, but yeah, so we haven't charged anybody any money for a septic inspection, and like y'all said, y'all proved it, we're not going to. Now, if there is something drastically wrong, that's when it comes before the Sewer Task Force Committee, and they make the decision, okay, well, can we help them with this, or no, this is their responsibility and they gotta pay, or can they have X amount of days to get it fixed, rather than saying, hey, you gotta get it fixed now, give them 90, 120, however long it is.
I have one other question about what Dean was saying. When we, they do the overlay at Edwards and Donna and then up Donna, what's it gonna affect in the long run when we start putting the houses in out there and they have cement trucks and delivery trucks? Are we gonna have to come back and fix those roads again? Or
Most
just like
likely,
we
I
need to
mean-
wait and do those roads last?
Yeah, I mean, we all know, we take a beating on our roads just from the trash trucks. Our roads from the get-go is one of those things that we've just sort of band-aided it. We've done patchwork and stuff like that, but we haven't done any extensive base repairs. They've done stuff about putting concrete and stuff like that, but it's been a few years since we've done anything. And that's just one of those things, you're always gonna have to deal with those kind of things. I mean,
I just think we keep that in consideration when we start figuring out the order
yeah.
of doing the streets.
Mhm.
So, that's all I have.
Nothing on the city side. I do wanna say I attended the fire department meeting last night, the monthly training meeting, and I was highly impressed with their training. And Class Act, Lonnie runs a pretty tight ship over there,
Tries to.
so it was a good deal.
Thanks, sir.
Proud of that.
Appreciate you.
I do have something, I should address this back at the city manager update. I know Corey really wanted to address this. Obviously, he's dealing with the death in the family and stuff, and, he asked me here a while back, obviously, over in the east side, one of the big things we've always wanted on the east side is a park. And it's like, well, where do you start on that, what do you do with it and everything else? There is a resident on the east side that has come to us and said that he would like to donate private funds of $20,000 for the city to match it. And then, there was a few other strings on there, and, I think we're totally in agreement. But where do we go with it? What does that look like to us, and how much funds do we need to get it going? So, we're gonna start the process, and we've already reached out to a few people, that deal with parks. But what we would really like to see over there is more or less like a master plan for a park over there. And then what it looks like, and try to phase it out to where, like, okay, well, First phase is gonna cost us $50,000, and that includes putting a swing set up and basketball goals. I'm just talking off the top of my head. Phase 2 is a walking trail around it, and then phase 3 is a gazebo with some benches and stuff like that. For us to start it, and then if we wanna look into raising funds here within the community, reach out to Texas Park and Wildlife, we got to have some kind of a plan, drawing, and stuff like that. And so we're gonna start that process, and really, that's one of the things Mayor really wanted to, because that's a great opportunity for somebody to come to us and say, hey, I would like to donate $20,000 if the city will match my funds and stuff. And so I think that's something, we haven't had that opportunity, and it's a neat opportunity to really start some stuff going over there, and then utilize that land that is over there, that the city owns and stuff.
Yeah, it's a good time for it, there's a ton of kids over there now. so
Yeah, there's tons of
good.
kids over there.
Yeah, kids everywhere.
And we have a few different spaces over there that the city owns. I know we bought one here a while back, 6 years ago, that Sam recommended that we might be able to use if we ever future expanded more homes over in the east, that we might have to put a lift station over there. So where we put it, they're gonna weigh out, you know, those people that come in, weigh out all the apps and say, your best place is to put one here, or your best place is to put one over here. And we're really gonna leave that up to the experts and not try to make the decisions ourselves on where to put it and everything else. And then I think what Corey's wanting to do is also put something out there when we get it, and let the public have input on it, saying, hey, no, we want to see a park here and there, so let the public have the say so in it and stuff.
No, you're good, yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot that Corey wanted to address that, he wasn't here, so.
Wanna work. The other thing I'm gonna say is back to the septic inspection, that's just a one-time, we're just doing this to get all the all the water running in, and all that's what we're hoping to address. This isn't gonna be a yearly.
No, we're not
This
gonna come back
This
every
hasn't
year.
happened forever, it probably won't happen. in
No, one of the
another
things,
forever.
yeah, one of the things they're doing is, obviously, we're documenting the size of tanks and everything else like that, and so depending upon your tank, the state already recommends, if you got 4 people living in your house and you only got a 500-gallon tank, they recommend pumping it every 1 year or 2 years. Well, that's something we've never kept up with, and it sort of crept up on us and hurt us on our whole infrastructure of our sewer right now. And so this way, we can have that documentation and know, hey, we gotta reach out to you, hey, you haven't had your tank pumped in 3 years, it's time, according to state recommendations, we need to come out there and put the sludge judge in and see if they need it pumped and everything else, and then tell them, hey, you need to get your tank pumped. And that's one of those things, I mean, you live in Lakeside City, you got a septic tank, you know you gotta have a pump. Some people buy the house, don't even know that there's a septic tank in there, or forget, you know, you move in, you get so caught up, and then you forget, and things underground and covered up, and you never know, and then all of a sudden, you're back up in your house, and you're like, what, I got a septic tank and I need to get a pump. I mean, literally, that's the calls we get. And so, that's one of the main things on these septic inspections, is just so we can have some documentation to look and see what's going on.
Good start for the long
Mhm.
term.
Yeah, yeah, we've knocked out quite a few. I mean, East Side has got a lot of them done, and so, very good results. No
I spoke to
complaints.
a resident the other day, he said he knew where his green tank was, but had no idea where his septic tank was.
Mhm.
So he was kinda waiting for someone to come around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just kidding, I did have one thing I forgot, somebody reached out to me. In the park, there's a lot more people, of course, using the park now, and there's a lot more dogs out there, so I had somebody that wanted to see about getting, like a water, almost like a dog fountain, on the bottom, because there's no place for a dog to get a drink, and they don't have access to hoses, and she sent me some of the things that she had found, and like they attach to a bottom of a water fountain, so you have a water fountain for a person on top, and then the dog water fountain on the bottom, to where the dogs can get a drink up there without having to carry, you know, a Tupperware and, or
No, that's a
something like
great
that for
idea.
your dog.
That's a great idea. I know there's a valve box out there, that there used to be a little water station fountain, and it doesn't work right now because that line busted, and it was one of those things, it was a vandalism thing, and the thing ran out for, but I will say now with the staff that we have, Don and Justin over there taking care of the park, they're very on top of that stuff, and that stuff we can catch